G'day mates, lovely to have you with us today. Welcome to Talking Synths, episode 17. And a special welcome to all our viewers from down under. Do we have any viewers from down under?
I'm sure we do, because I just sent an express package all the way down under today.
All right,
Yeah.
welcome to that one. All right. Luke has a big list of stuff for us to make sure we do.
Before we forget.
I'm Sam.
I'm Carlos.
All right, check, got that done. Parts, we sell parts at Syntaur.com. We're supposed to tell you that. So if you need parts for any keyboard, we hopefully will have them. Just go to Syntaur.com, click on the brand, click on the model, find the part you need.
How long have you been doing that for, selling parts?
Syntaur started in 1988, but that was initially as a sound design company, and I wish I knew when we started the parts into things.
What was the transition into that, or how did that even come about?
Selling sounds got too crazy because we would be real meticulous, and you know, we'd spend a long time doing a set of programs for synthesizers or you know, sample discs or whatever. We'd make sure everything was programmed. If you push this button, if you use the control pedal, whatever. It was a tedious process, and we made really good products that, you know, because of that. No matter what modulator you did, it would do something useful to the sound. And we'd have to charge, you know, enough to make a living at it. And then people started coming out with, buy this DVD with 800 million sounds for $19.95. Yeah, we just couldn't compete with that. So I guess we had started selling some Ensoniq little doodads and
like the cartridges, the expansions?
Yeah, we sold sounds on the cartridges, but I think we ended up with some keys or whatever and started going down that road. It seemed like a good road to go down, and no one was doing it, so we said, let's do that.
And then the rest is Centaur history.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, another one on the list there. If you have any questions you'd like answered, or if you'd like us to chat about a certain topic, just send us an email, talkingsynths@syntaur.com. And then the last one, we started taking video submissions from viewers and customers. It started out when a couple of people bought a replacement key or a pod or something and said, hey, I put this in my keyboard, got it working, I made some video of it. Do y'all want to use it? And yeah, that's cool. So if you have a good video clip of you doing a repair like that, you know, it's impossible for us to cover every repair to every keyboard. So we'd love to have you send us your stuff, and we'll do some editing on it, put it up on our YouTube channel, send you a free shirt. Nice. Yeah, so it's cool. Get the word out to everybody and become a synthesizer hero by showing all your folks how to replace this key on a whatchamadoodle.
Yeah, and I mean, we get so many questions too that are also like very specific of how do I change the key on this specific keyboard, and this is my situation. And it's one of those, I wish I had an answer for everyone, but this could really be, you know, if we just had put all our collective efforts in, you know, we can really give back to the synthesizer community and help someone else who really wants to play their keyboard, but they got a damaged key, you know? Yeah, so I'm excited about it. Yeah,
so we've had several of them, and they're real good. So if you've got one, send it on in. Oh, one more thing that I made a note of. If you like Talking Synths, press that little like button, which is right, I can't quite reach it from here. Can you reach it? The like and subscribe button that's right down there. Click those buttons, it'll help us out, and you'll be sure and get notified when we have new material coming out.
Nice.
So, alrighty. Now, last episode or 2 episodes ago, or at some point in the recent past, we talked about floppy disks, and we had a couple of comments of things that we left out, and I had a note of my own of, oh, I wish I would have said that. But one person said, hey, how about those 8-inch floppy disks that went in the
PPG, and I believe maybe the early Fairlights.
Those big old huge things. You'd handle them with both hands and put them in the floppy drive. So yeah, we didn't talk about those, and I don't have one to show you. And then the other one that right after we finished the episode, I thought, oh, we should have mentioned the quick disc. These little cute darlings that went in the Akai S612, the Roland S50, I think, used these, did it?
S612?
Well, the Akai S612, yeah. And then some Roland stuff used them. They're cute little discs like this. And
interesting.
If you need to get any of these, best of luck to you. It's hard enough to get regular floppy disks, but to get these little darlings, just, I don't know.
Yeah. And what does that say the capacity on it? Just for kind of interested. If any of y'all know what the capacity on one of these quick discs is, I'd be interested to know. So leave that in the comments below.
It doesn't say the capacity, but it does have a nice assortment of foreign languages on the back. I don't know what they're saying. Okay, and then one other thing I wanted to mention. This is a high-density floppy disk, and you know that because, I'll open that up, because it has two holes in this. Now, if you're using an EPS or EPS 16 or other keyboard that needs double density discs, those are long out of production. They're hard to find these days. You can still find high density discs even though these are out of production. Can you use this in those? Well, as I said, it's got two holes in the disc. That second hole, the one without the little slidey window, tells your drive that this is a high density disk. So when you stick it in there, it's got a little doo-wah ditty that goes down in that hole, detects that there's a hole there and says, whoop, this is a high density disk. When I format, I'm going to make it high density, etc. So if you can use this in a double density drive by putting a piece of tape over that second hole, and just a little Scotch tape or painter's tape, whatever. Don't use painter's tape, it might curl up too easy, but electrical tape, whatever.
I usually use electrical tape. I feel like it's got a nice form fitting to it.
Yeah, and it lays down flat. So just cover that hole, stick it in there, and then say, yeah, this is a double density disc. Trust me. And it'll format it as double density. And
now, do you void any warranties by doing that?
You void any warranties on the sounds or data that you're saving.
Okay.
I've heard through internet rumor that if you format a high density disk as a double density disk and save stuff to it, it's not as reliable as if you used a real double density disk.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think the name of the game is just to make sure you have everything backed up.
That's always the name of the game if you're using anything related to a floppy.
Quick discs were 128 kilobytes.
128 kilobytes.
Luke got that for us. Quick disk, 128.
That 128 or up to 256.
Okay.
Up to? What if I say, well, yeah, I want the extra.
I only want about 180. Let's split the difference.
I guess it goes back to what we were saying, how it sectors disks and how the fat table is arranged and all that. So anyway, all right. Thanks thanks to the research department for that.
Young Luke.
All right. Is that all we want to say about floppy disks? That's all I want to say about floppy disks.
I'm sure we forgot something in there, but
and if we do, tune in next time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to another topic near and dear to our hearts, and that is power adapters. There is always lots of forum posts and that sort of thing relating to power adapters. Hey, I lost the power adapter on my Flugel Blaster 8000. Can someone tell me what to use? And then you look on the back of that Flugel Blaster 8000 and it says 12 volts. Well, does that answer all your questions? No, no, and no. There are so many things to take care of if you want to get a power adapter for replacing the one that you've lost. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I'm going to just put out a request there. don't call this a power supply. Lots of people do. They say, I need a power supply for my whatever. Yeah, technically this is a power supply, but when someone says power supply, I think of the circuit board.
It's actually physically inside of the unit.
Yeah, and it's got capacitors and regulators on it.
It's got capacitors and regulators.
Yeah, but you can't see them, so just call this a power adapter. Now the other thing is, some people call this a power cord. A cord is just like wires in a plug. This has capacitors and regulators in it. So don't call it a cord. This is a power adapter. Okay, that's my plea to the internet. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of these, I wanted to say why so many things use these. Because if you got a mess of synthesizers and pedals and whatnot, you might have 20 of these things that you got to plug into power strips, and it's obnoxious, and you say, why couldn't they just put a cord on it? Well, the answer to that is, if you look on the back of this one, for instance, it says UL in a little circle. Yeah. That UL means that little gizmo is approved by Underwriters Laboratories, which means they've tested it and said, yeah, it's not going to blow up or start a house fire. And because of that UL seal on that, it means that, yes, it's okay to sell this electrical item. Now, if you decide you want to make a synthesizer, like the mini Korg that you have down there, for instance, you can make that synthesizer, and if you put a AC power cord on it, that thing has to be submitted to Underwriters Laboratories. It has to be tested, made sure it's not going to blow up when you plug it in, all that kind of stuff. That is a hugely expensive process. Let's say it takes a year to go through the whole process. Yeah. Well, man, if you're putting out a synthesizer like that, you want to be a year behind the market? No, you don't. So it's much easier to put the power supply on the outside, not have to get the synthesizer checked and tested by Underwriters Laboratory, and then you just call up the manufacturer in China that makes these things and say 75,000 of them of this specification or whatever, because they've already done the UL stuff. Yeah. So that's the reasoning behind all this. It just makes it immensely less expensive to bring a product to market. Interesting. And there's similar stuff in the UK and other countries that, similar to UL, but to sell it in America, in the United States, has to have that UL on it. Okay, now get into the nitty gritty. Yeah. The first thing, if you want to replace a power supply, the first question to ask is...
Power supply or power adapter? There we go.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yeah.
I violated my own vow. If you want to replace a power adapter, the first question that you need to answer is the output AC or is the output DC? Those are very different, and you can't mix them up. AC is like what comes out of the wall. DC is rectified, and it's just a smooth, constant voltage. AC is
alternating current, direct current.
Right. Yeah. You don't really need to know all that. What you do need to know is, does my synthesizer or whatever piece of gear want to see AC, or does it want to see DC? And then when you get a power adapter, it's going to say on the back here, it'll always say input such and such, output on this one it says 9 VAC, 9 volts AC is the output from this. So you need to make sure that your item wants to see AC voltage to use that power adapter. Most things are going to be DC. They're going to want to see DC. So that's step one. Step two, how many volts do you want to see?
A lot.
The more the merrier?
Yeah.
No, just enough. You want just enough. Not too much, not too little. And everything is usually going to say that. Let's go back to this mini Korg. There it is. Micro Korg, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm saying everything wrong today. It says right back there, DC 9V. So that means you want to see 9 volts DC coming into this thing. So now you can go out and buy any 9-volt DC
And just plug it
power
right in,
adapter and
right?
plug it in, right?
So you made a plea earlier, you know, and so this is going to be my plea. Please just do not plug random power adapters into the back of your synthesizer.
Random, but what if you have a 9-volt DC power adapter?
Okay, so here's the thing. There's this thing called polarity, and it's very important. And especially when it comes to things like the early microcorgs, it's going to be looking for that polarity, and you have what's called reverse polarity protection on the actual circuit. Not every synthesizer is going to have that. So I think you have a picture over here that will actually show the barrel.
I do. Well, first of all, let's go back to this microcorg. I hope you guys can see this, but it's got a little diagram right there, and I'm going to show you a blow-up of that diagram right here. This is the little polarity diagram like Carlos is talking about. Everything that plugs in that's DC is going to have either this picture or this picture. And if it doesn't have that picture, you better go back and check, because it might want to see AC. But DC has a polarity, AC doesn't. And so I'll let you talk about what happens if you plug in the wrong polarity.
Yeah, so if you plug in the wrong polarity and there's not a diode, what a diode's going to do is it's going to protect the circuit from receiving the wrong polarity. But if that's not in there, then you're in for a world of hurt. And I've done this, you know, personally. I think it's kind of one of the faux pas that everyone makes at some point in time. For me, I had some delay pedals set out, you know, on my desk and a drum machine, and I was so eager and ready, you know, excited to go. And I just plugged that barrel into the back, and I had gotten my power supplies mixed up. I plugged into a delay with the wrong polarity. It didn't have reverse polarity protection, and the pedal died instantly.
Yeah.
And it, yeah.
What a diode does is it says if you're going in the if the current is going in the right direction, it says, yeah, come on through, no problem, come on through. If the current is going in the wrong direction, it says, hold it, you're not coming through. And so if you have that diode protection in there and you put the you have the wrong polarity, your electricity is going to be flowing in the opposite direction. That diode's going to say, no can do.
Yeah.
Go back where you came, and it'll protect everything.
So like with the early microcorgs, the real big problem is, you know, obviously there's a fuse. The fuse is going to blow. There's a surface mount voltage regulator that's fairly difficult to replace. That'll more than likely blow. If you replace those two items, you still haven't made it out of the woods yet. If you fried the CPU, sorry, there's just it's a lost cause at that point. You know?
And it might end up on our table here as a demo.
Yeah, well, and that's, you know, you're looking at a $300 to $500 investment, depending, and all it takes is a split second, and then you've lost your synthesizer.
And sometimes, like you say, it's just a matter of hurrying. You're not taking the time to look at, did I grab the wrong wire in your case, or, oh, I think this is the right power adapter.
Yeah. In my case, you know, my power strip was underneath the desk, so I couldn't see this. It was all underneath. All I had were the barrels.
Yeah.
So after a while, they all looked the same.
Yeah.
And that's all it took.
So make sure you get the polarity right. So we've got AC or DC. You've answered that question already. You've got voltage. You've looked on the back of your synthesizer and seen what voltage it wants. You've looked at the polarity. All right, here's the chart again. Here's what this means. It's got a little link to each part of the barrel, and there's a pin inside the barrel in the center, and that's going to be designated either plus or minus. And the plus means it's positive polarity, the minus means it's negative polarity. And so in the real world, let's see, here's this adapter. So what that means, let's say we want a positive polarity. That means this outer part of the barrel here is going to be the ground, it's going to be negative, and then the inner connector where that little pin will slide into, or this slides over the pin, that inner side of this barrel is going to be the positive connector. And for a negative polarity, the inside will be negative outside will be positive. A lot of the Roland stuff, early Roland stuff and some of the early Korg stuff kind of went opposite to how the rest of the world did, and they used negative polarity adapters. So they're a little bit hard to find for all those Boss pedals, for some of the early synthesizers. You need that negative polarity, and when you go to Walmart or whatever and find power adapters, they're usually positive polarity. So.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things, I know I say it time and time again, but if you have any questions, read the owner's manual. You know, if it doesn't have your polarity stated in the back of the synthesizer and you're confused, 9 times out of 10, your owner's manual is going to be available for PDF online.
Yeah.
Great place to check. The information will be there.
Yeah, and also on the back of the adapters itself, it'll usually have that little diagram too to tell you if the adapter's positive or negative polarity. Okay, next thing you got to check, enough amps or not. Every power adapter is going to show you an amperage rating. Every synthesizer should tell you how much draw it has, and this is a little confusing to people because those numbers don't have to match. Let's see if this one says it. This one doesn't say, but some items will say how much.
9 volt, 0.5 amp.
Okay, like this little darling here says DC 9 volt, 0.5 amp. What that means is when you turn this on and your power adapter's plugged into it, it is going to draw a maximum of 0.5 amp of current. Now your power adapter doesn't have to be a 0.5 amp rating. It can be a 1 amp, it can be 1600 amps, it can be anything higher than that, but you can't go lower. If you go lower than that, the keyboard is going to want to pull more power than the power adapter is able to deliver, and it's not going to work right. And it can sometimes damage it, or certainly can make it not work correctly. But you can use a power adapter with a higher rating, and that's like, what's an analogy? All right, I got to be this strong to pick up this heavy keyboard. Got it. If I'm just barely strong enough, I can pick it up. Well, if I'm a real he-man,
or he-woman,
exactly, then I can pick it up with no problem. It don't matter. Either way, I got it picked up. But if I'm not strong enough, I'm not going to be able to pick it up. And that's if your amperage rating is too low, you're not going to be strong enough. Anything over what's stated on the thing you're plugging into, you're good to go. All right, so we got AC or DC, we got the voltage, we got the amperage, we got the polarity. Is there anything else? Why, yes, there is. Sorry this is so complicated. You got to make sure the connector's the right size. So is this barrel going to fit inside the connector just right, or is it not? And is the pin going to fit just right, or is it not? Yeah. There's some standards. If the pin is 2.1 millimeters, or if it's 2.5 millimeters, those are kind of the standards that are going to cover most of your stuff. And I actually have a little assortment of plugs here that I use, and these are all color coded. And if I'm trying to find the right adapter for a piece of gear, I'll see which one of these plugs in correctly. Oh, it's the blue one, so it's 2.1 millimeter, whatever. So you got to get that part too. And I see so many internet forum posts where they say, okay, I've got a DC adapter, it's 12 volts, it's negative polarity, am I good to go? You got to know what size barrel and all you need. And unfortunately, most of that information is never posted anywhere. It's not in the service manual, it's not in the owner's manual. It's going to be hard to find. So,
however, if you do email us and you're asking for a power adapter, sometimes in the owner's manual there will be a manufacturer's part number.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can cross-reference that. So once again, like I said, owner's manual is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wait, is there more?
Yes, there's more.
Yes, there is. All right. Early analog synthesizers in particular were susceptible to noise from power supplies and that sort of thing. Basically, there's a few different types of these power supplies. Well, and I guess we ought to cover this too. Like this one right here has a multi-pin connector. And some power supplies don't have a single output voltage. You say 9 volts. Well, you might have one here that's plus 5 volts and plus 15 volts all together on a multi-pin connector. So that gets crazy as well.
Yeah.
And then you have this this item from, this is a power adapter from Roland that worked with their R8 drum machine. And anyone recognize that connector? No, because no one in the free world has ever seen one. Roland just pulled it out of somewhere and said, let's use this on the R8.
They probably got a great deal.
Could be. There's nothing else on the planet that uses that connector, and no one on the planet sells that connector. So, yeah, sorry, people with Roland R8s that lost their power adapter. It's going to be expensive to replace it. But what I was getting at before, there's a couple of different types of power supplies inside these adapters. There's a linear power supply, and there's switching power supplies. And a linear power supply is sort of an analog thing that says, I'm going to go through this circuitry and I'm going to put out this constant voltage. And then a switching power supply does a lot of switching and is going rapidly from this to that, and without getting into all the technical details, it can make a lot of electrical noise. And by electrical noise, I mean that when you plug it into your synthesizer, if your synthesizer isn't correctly grounded, shielded, set up for using one of those, it's going to start buzzing in the audio outputs. So
you tend to see that a lot as well in the Euro rack world, where with switching power supplies, I know some modules are capacitive, as far as they have touch plates, and those tend to be pretty susceptible to poor power supply design.
Yeah. Well, and the advantage of switching power supplies is, I don't know if this is universally true, but many of them, you can plug them into 110, you can plug them into 220, you can plug them into 240. They're just going to detect what's there, and then they're going to say, okay, I'm going to switch accordingly to output the right voltage. So, so they're really cool. I mean, it's nice to have them, but sometimes if you use it in the wrong piece of gear, it might make it buzzy and noisy. And if you use a linear power supply instead, it's going to be quiet. So, is that enough detail for?
Probably not. There's probably a million things that we didn't cover, just because it's such a wide topic. There's so many different keyboards out there, so many different synthesizers, effects pedals, mixing consoles. Someone came in the other day looking for a very specific Behringer mixer power adapter. There was I believe the DIN on it was a female jack, and it was just one that we didn't have because it was so specific. So it's one of those things, once again, I wish we had an answer for everyone, but sometimes
Sometimes the answer is watch this episode and go down this checklist. Is it the right voltage? Is it the right amperage? Is it the right polarity? Is it the right this? Is it the right that?
It's enough to drive you crazy. I actually genuinely lose sleep at night thinking about it sometimes.
Well, hopefully you can rest easier this evening.
No, it's not going to happen.
All right. Well, anyway, we've done our best to try to put all the stuff out there. I hope it helps. It's good to get educated on that. But mainly, I think the word is, if you don't know if this one works or not, don't plug it in yet until you figure it out. Err
on the side of caution. And there was one thing that I kind of wanted to show, Luke, if we have enough time. I just wanted to show, for example, how fast electricity works and kind of the risk that you're running. So what I have here is probably one of my favorite tools that I use, not only in the studio, but for diagnosing. And this is an Arteria Key Step. Okay, so Luke's gonna grab me the power supply. And this was something that I noticed, and it kind of caught me off guard. And it's gonna happen literally in the blink of an eye, so maybe we'll do it twice. But I have a power supply, it's not connected. There's capacitors in here, and it's storing energy. And energy is like water. Electricity, it's like water. It's gonna take the path of least resistance, and that electricity wants to discharge from here. So even though it's not plugged in, when I plug it in, can you see?
A little closer.
Closer. Tell me when I'm there. Am I there?
Right.
Are we there yet?
You see that? It lit up. Okay. With it not plugged in, that was enough to power the LEDs. Now, if you have something like this that doesn't have reverse polarity protection, you know, that's literally all it takes, the blink of an eye. You plug that in, there goes the fuse, the voltage regulator, and possibly the CPU.
And when you say plug it in, if you plug it into the keyboard while you're holding this, while this isn't even plugged into the wall, it can still do damage.
For all intents and purposes, you know, this is a battery. It's holding a charge. So that was kind of something that I wanted to illustrate, because there's nothing that makes Carlos sad, more sad than, you know, having a pile of synthesizers that are just beyond repair because of a very foolish mistake. You know, yeah.
Isn't that job security?
Job insanity is what it is. It's just makes me sad.
Well,
so, with that.
All right, so we've reached the end of our discourse, and with that, we'll wish you modulator.